I still remember the moment an older patient grabbed my hand, eyes filled with frustration, and said, "Doctor, I just want to get out of bed without pain." His words stayed with me. For years, I had seen men and women just like him, once full of energy, now moving slowly, shoulders hunched, their days consumed by stiff joints and relentless aches. And what struck me most was not the pain itself, but how invisible it made them feel. Family and friends may sympathize for a while, but eventually, people grow tired of hearing about the same pain, the same complaints. And so, many suffer in silence. I want you to imagine this. Every step you take feels like grinding glass in your knees. Every turn of the wrist like twisting rusted metal. That's what chronic inflammation and joint pain do. They rob people not only of mobility, but also of dignity. Yet here's the shocking truth. After years of practice, I discovered that the solution is always in a pill bottle, nor is it in the most expensive treatments. Sometimes it's hidden in the very foods we've forgotten to eat. Foods our grandparents knew well. Foods modern diets have quietly pushed aside. It'll tell you something that startled even me. There's one humble vegetable, overlooked in nearly every grocery store, that has the power to calm the very fires of inflammation. It doesn't come in a shiny package. It doesn't make headlines in flashy health magazines. In fact, most people walk right past it, never realizing it contains compounds so powerful that researchers are only now beginning to rediscover their potential. Think about that for a moment. Billions spent every year on painkillers, anti-inflammatories, injections, and yet, sitting quietly in the produce aisle is a natural weapon against the very problem tormenting millions. Why haven't you heard about it? Because no one makes money from telling you to eat a vegetable. No pharmaceutical company can patent it. No advertising giant will feature it on television. And so, it remains hidden in plain sight. I've watched patients who could barely grip a teacup regain strength in their hands. I've seen grandmothers who struggled to climb stairs suddenly chase their grandchildren across the lawn. The secret wasn't a miracle drug. It was a shift back to the forgotten wisdom of nature. Now, before I reveal what this vegetable is, I need to explain why it matters. Inflammation is just about sore knees or stiff fingers. It's the root cause of devastating conditions: arthritis, heart disease, even memory decline. It is silent, creeping into the body, damaging blood vessels, eroding cartilage, attacking nerves. And by the time symptoms show up, years of destruction have already taken place. That's why it's so critical we act before it's too late. But here's the hopeful part. Inflammation is not a life sentence. It can be reversed, controlled, quieted, and yes, even healed. When I first started seeing this in my own patients, I knew it wasn't coincidence. It was science. Hidden inside this forgotten vegetable are compounds that switch off inflammatory signals at the cellular level, almost like putting out a raging fire with water. I'll admit, when I first dug into the research, I felt skeptical, but the evidence was too strong to ignore. Study after study confirmed what I was seeing in the clinic, and that's when I realized people deserve to know. They deserve to have this knowledge at their fingertips so they can reclaim their mobility, their energy, their lives. The truth is, you may already know this vegetable by name, but you've never thought of it as medicine. And once I tell you, you'll never look at it the same way again. So what is this forgotten vegetable? And how exactly does it fight the very inflammation that steals our freedom to move? That's what I'll reveal in the next part. When I finally uncovered the truth, I couldn't believe how long it had been hiding in plain sight. The vegetable I'm talking about is celery. Yes, celery, the crunchy green stalk you may remember from diet fads in the 1980s, or as nothing more than a garnish on a plate. People laugh when I first tell them, "Celery? Really, doctor? That's rabbit food." But then I show them what's inside this unassuming stalk, and the laughter quickly fades into astonishment. You see, celery contains a powerful compound called apigenin. This natural plant flavonoid has been shown to reduce the expression of inflammatory markers in the body. In simpler terms, it tells your immune system to stop overreacting, to calm down, to stop attacking your own joints and tissues. When I read the research, I thought about the countless patients I had prescribed anti-inflammatory drugs to medications with long lists of side effects, from stomach ulcers to kidney problems. And here was celery, capable of producing some of the same anti-inflammatory benefits, without the dangerous downsides. But celery doesn't stop at apigenin. It also contains luteolin, another plant compound that protects the brain from inflammation-related damage. Think about that for a moment. The same vegetable that cools the fire in your joints may also shield your memory, your clarity, your very identity from the slow erosion of chronic inflammation. For older adults, this is not just about moving without pain. It's about protecting independence, preserving the ability to think clearly, to remember names, faces, stories. And yet, how many people actually eat celery on a regular basis? Not the occasional stick dipped in peanut butter, not a few chopped bits hidden in soup. I mean truly embracing it as part of a daily diet. Very few. We've forgotten it. We've replaced it with processed snacks, with sugary treats, with foods that actually fuel inflammation instead of fighting it. It's no wonder joint pain is on the rise. One woman I worked with, Margaret, was in her late 60s. Her arthritis was so severe that her hands had become curled, stiff, almost claw-like. She had tried every treatment available, from over-the-counter pain relievers to steroid injections. Nothing gave her lasting relief. When I suggested adding celery into her daily meals, she laughed. But she tried it. Within weeks, she noticed her morning stiffness easing. Within months, she could grip her garden tools again. Was it a cure? No. But it gave her life back. And to her, that was nothing short of a miracle. Of course, celery alone won't undo years of damage. It's a tool, not a magic wand. But combined with other lifestyle changes, reducing processed foods, staying active, managing stress, it can transform the way inflammation behaves in your body. I tell my patients, think of celery as a signal, a reminder that healing often comes not from laboratories or drug companies, but from the soil. And here's something few people realize: the part of celery with the highest concentration of anti-inflammatory compounds is not the stalk, it's the leaves. Those leafy tops we so often cut off and throw away. They're packed with more antioxidants than the sticks themselves. Every time I see someone toss them in the trash, I want to stop them and say, "You're throwing away medicine." Now, you might be wondering if celery is so powerful. Why don't we hear about it more? Why isn't every doctor prescribing it? The answer is uncomfortable. Medicine, as much as it's about healing, is also about money. There's no profit in telling people to buy a bunch of celery for a few dollars. There's no marketing campaign pushing you toward the produce aisle. And so, the truth gets buried under the weight of billion-dollar pharmaceutical advertising. But I believe you deserve to know. You deserve to have every weapon possible against inflammation. And celery is only the beginning. Because while this humble vegetable has incredible power, it's part of a larger family of natural foods that, together, can rewrite your health story. What I'm about to share next goes even deeper. Certain foods you may eat every single day could be fueling your pain, undoing the very healing celery tries to bring. And unless you know what they are, you may be fighting a losing battle. When I talk about fighting inflammation, I can't just focus on what heals, I also have to reveal what harms. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. For every natural food that calms inflammation, there are 5 more common foods silently fanning the flames. And these are the ones most people eat every single day without realizing the damage they're doing. One of the biggest culprits is refined sugar. I've seen patients who think their aching joints are simply a part of aging. But when we peel back the layers, we discover their diets are packed with hidden sugars in cereals, sauces, breads, even so-called healthy snacks. Sugar triggers a rapid spike in blood glucose, which sets off a cascade of inflammatory signals in the body. It's like tossing gasoline on a fire that's already burning. And if you have arthritis or chronic joint pain, that fire doesn't just flare, it rages. Then there are refined oils: soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil. They're cheap, they're everywhere, and they're loaded with omega-6 fatty acids. While omega-6 south are not inherently bad, the modern diet overwhelms the body with them, creating an imbalance that drives inflammation. I once looked at a food journal from a patient and realized nearly every meal she ate was fried, packaged, or processed with these oils. Her joints told the story. Every step was agony. And let's not forget processed meats, bacon, hot dogs, deli slices. These are filled with preservatives and compounds that not only fuel inflammation, but also damage the gut, which is where much of our immune system lives. A compromised gut means an overactive immune response, which means more pain, more stiffness, more swelling. Now, I don't share this to shame anyone. I know how life goes. It's easier to grab what's quick and cheap, especially when cooking feels exhausting or painful. I've sat at the bedside of patients who told me they knew their habits weren't perfect, but felt powerless to change them. That's where I remind them, it doesn't take perfection. It takes awareness. And once you see the connection between what you eat and how you feel, the motivation to shift becomes natural. I remember a man named Harold, 72 years old. He walked into my office leaning heavily on a cane, his knees swollen and his face lined with pain. He swore he had tried everything. But when we looked closer, his breakfast was a sweetened cereal with skim milk. Lunch was a sandwich with deli meat on white bread, and dinner was often fried chicken or pizza. He wasn't just living with inflammation, he was feeding it 3 times a day. So, I challenged him. I asked him to cut out processed sugars and refined oils for just 2 weeks. At the same time, I encouraged him to add more anti-inflammatory foods, starting with celery and leafy greens. By the end of those 2 weeks, he walked into my office without the cane. Still stiff, yes. Still healing, but lighter, freer, and astonished. He told me, I didn't think food could make this much difference. And here's the part that most people miss. Inflammation doesn't only damage your joints. It quietly attacks your heart, your brain, your blood vessels. That's why so many seniors not only suffer from arthritis, but also struggle with memory decline, heart disease, and fatigue. It's all connected. Your body is one system, not separate parts. If you feed it foods that cause inflammation, you'll pay the price in more ways than one. But this is where hope shines through. Just as the wrong foods fuel the fire, the right foods can put it out. We've already talked about celery, but it's not alone. There are entire groups of foods, colorful, natural, vibrant foods that act like medicine for the body. And when combined, their effects are even more powerful than when eaten alone. The question is, which ones matter most? Which should you focus on to get the greatest relief, the most noticeable change, the fastest return to comfort and mobility? That's exactly what I'll share next. When people ask me where to start, I always say this: go back to color. Nature paints her medicines in vibrant hues, and each shade carries unique compounds designed to protect the body. That's why I tell my patients to look at their plate and ask themselves, does this meal look alive? Or does it look beige and lifeless? Beige foods, breads, pastas, fried snacks are usually stripped of their healing power. But the reds, greens, purples, and oranges, that's where the magic lies. Take dark leafy greens, for example. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, they're rich in vitamins A, C, and K, as well as powerful antioxidants that sweep through the body, reducing the oxidative stress that drives inflammation. I've seen patients who simply added 1 green smoothie a day report less morning stiffness within weeks. And the beauty is, greens don't just calm inflammation, they also strengthen bones, something especially vital as we age. Then there are berries. Blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, all bursting with anthocyanins, pigments that not only reduce inflammation, but also protect the brain from age-related decline. One study I read compared the memory of older adults who ate berries daily with those who didn't, and the difference was striking. The berry eaters held onto their cognitive function longer, sharper, and stronger. Imagine that. Something as simple as a bowl of berries helping you remember your grandchild's laugh or your partner's touch. Turmeric is another extraordinary ally. This golden spice, long used in traditional medicine, contains curcumin, one of the most studied natural anti-inflammatory compounds in the world. I remember a patient who had struggled for years with knee pain. After introducing turmeric tea into her routine, alongside other dietary changes, she came back months later with tears in her eyes. "Doctor," she said, "I can kneel in my garden again." That joy, the ability to do something small yet deeply meaningful, is what healing truly looks like. And then there are fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel. They're rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which balance out the omega-6 overload from processed foods. Omega-3 South work almost like firefighters, dousing the flames of inflammation at the molecular level. Patients who once dreaded climbing stairs have told me their joints feel more fluid, more forgiving, when they make fatty fish a staple in their diet. Even something as simple as green tea plays a role. It contains catechins that protect cartilage and reduce inflammation in the body. I've made it a personal habit to replace my afternoon coffee with green tea, and I recommend it to anyone struggling with inflammation. It's not just a drink, it's a daily dose of defense. The key is not to see these foods as individual miracles, but as a symphony. Alone, each has power. Together, they create harmony that supports your body in ways no pill can fully replicate. It's why I emphasize building meals around these foods, not treating them as occasional add-ons. But here's the critical part most people overlook: consistency. Eating a stalk of celery once won't erase years of inflammation. Drinking 1 cup of green tea won't undo decades of damage. But small, steady changes repeated daily create momentum. I've watched patients transform their health not through dramatic overhauls, but through quiet persistence. That's the secret. Healing is less about intensity, more about consistency. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Doctor, this sounds wonderful, but I don't know where to start. I feel overwhelmed. That's natural. But I always remind people it starts with one choice, one meal. One step. Because each step, no matter how small, signals to your body that healing is possible. And yet, there's another hidden factor that I haven't mentioned yet. Even if you fill your diet with the most powerful anti-inflammatory foods, there's one sneaky mistake that can undo all your progress. Something I've seen even the most health-conscious people overlook. What is it? I'll reveal that in the next part. Over the years, I've watched patients do everything right. They cut out processed sugar, added anti-inflammatory foods, even made exercise a habit. And yet, their pain lingered. Their joints still throbbed in the morning. Their energy was still low. It puzzled me at first, until I realized they were overlooking one of the most crucial elements of healing: hydration. I don't mean simply drinking more water, though that's part of it. I mean the quality of the fluids we put into our bodies and how they influence inflammation. Think of your joints as hinges. Without proper lubrication, the hinges grind, squeak, and wear down. Your body is no different. Synovial fluid, the natural lubricant in your joints, depends on hydration. Without it, cartilage breaks down faster, inflammation rises, and pain becomes constant. But here's the catch. Many people believe they're hydrated because they drink plenty of fluids. The problem is, most of those fluids are the wrong ones. Coffee, sodas, energy drinks, they dehydrate. They force your kidneys to flush out more water, leaving your tissues parched. I once had a patient who proudly told me he drank 6 cups of liquid a day, only to admit they were all coffee. No wonder his knees felt like sandpaper grinding on bone. Proper hydration is just about water intake, it's about electrolytes. Sodium, potassium, magnesium. Without these, water can't do its job. It slips through you, leaving cells thirsty. That's why I often recommend simple remedies: water with a pinch of sea salt, or water infused with cucumber and lemon. These small tweaks help the body actually absorb hydration, instead of letting it wash away unused. I've seen remarkable changes when patients make this shift. Skin becomes brighter, energy steadier, and yes, joints move more smoothly. One woman in her 70s told me she felt like she had oiled her body from the inside out, after finally learning to hydrate properly. But hydration has another layer, one most people never connect with: joint pain. Toxins. When your body lacks water, toxins linger longer in the bloodstream, irritating tissues and triggering inflammation. Hydration is your body's cleaning system. Without it, garbage piles up and your joints pay the price. And then there's alcohol. I have to be blunt here. Alcohol is one of the most overlooked drivers of inflammation I've ever seen. Even moderate amounts can worsen joint pain. I remember a patient who had done everything right, but every evening he poured himself a harmless glass of wine. It wasn't until he cut back that he finally experienced real relief. The difference stunned him. He told me, "Doctor, I thought wine was supposed to be good for the heart." And while there's truth in moderation, the effect on his joints was undeniable. This is why I warn my patients, if you want to reclaim your mobility, you cannot afford to ignore hydration. It's simple, it's inexpensive, and it can amplify everything else you're doing. Think of celery, leafy greens, and turmeric as your army, and hydration as the road they travel on. Without the road, your army can't reach the battlefield. But even hydration is the whole story, because there's another hidden factor, one I've seen destroy progress again and again: stress. It may surprise you, but stress is not just a mental burden, it's a biological one. When stress hormones like cortisol remain elevated, they ignite inflammation deep within your body. It's the silent saboteur of joint health. And how do you fight stress? Not just for your mind, but for your joints. That's what I'll uncover next. I've lost count of how many times I've seen patients do everything right with food and hydration, only to be undone by stress. At first, they don't believe me. They say, "Doctor, I don't see how worrying about my bills or family can make my knees ache." But then I explain what stress really does inside the body, and their eyes widen with recognition. When you're under stress, your body releases cortisol, the so-called stress hormone. In small bursts, cortisol is useful. It helps us survive emergencies, fuels quick reactions, sharpens focus. But when stress lingers day after day, cortisol stays high. And here's the problem. High cortisol doesn't just cloud your mood, it directly fuels inflammation. It tells your immune system to stay on alert, to keep producing inflammatory chemicals that gnaw away at your joints, your blood vessels, even your brain. I once worked with a retired teacher named Elaine. She ate well, walked every day, even meditated occasionally. But she was also the primary caregiver for her husband with dementia. Her shoulders and hips ached constantly, and no treatment seemed to help. When we dug deeper, it wasn't her diet or her hydration that was the issue. It was the relentless stress of caregiving. Her body was stuck in survival mode, bathing her joints in cortisol day and night. This is why stress management is just a luxury, it's medicine. And it doesn't have to mean complicated retreats or expensive therapies. Sometimes it's as simple as deep breathing, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 at night. That gentle pause lowers cortisol, lowers inflammation, and gives the body a chance to heal. I've seen patients go from clenched jaws and stiff shoulders to moving more freely simply by making time for this practice. Laughter, too, is medicine. It sounds click, but I've watched cortisol levels drop and pain levels ease when patients reconnect with joy. One gentleman in his 70s joined a weekly board game night with friends. At first, he went just for the company. But within months, his joint pain eased more than it had with any pill. He told me, "Doctor, I think it's the laughter that's saving me." And I believed him. Even sleep plays a role. When we sleep deeply, cortisol falls, inflammation cools, and tissues repair. But too many people ignore this, staying up late, scrolling through phones, or tossing in bed with worry. I remind them, without sleep, your body can't put out the fires of inflammation. It's like trying to heal a wound while picking at it every night. And here's the twist most people don't realize. Stress doesn't just come from emotions. It comes from loneliness. Isolation is one of the most powerful stressors in older adults, and it quietly fuels inflammation, just as much as sugar or processed food. I've seen people who lived alone, cut off from community, experience more pain than those surrounded by loved ones even when their diets were similar. The human heart needs connection, and without it, the body suffers. This is why I tell my patients, healing is not just physical, it's emotional, relational, spiritual. You cannot separate the body from the mind, the joints from the heart, to reverse inflammation. You must nurture all of it, and when you do, the changes are profound. So now, let me bring everything together: the forgotten vegetable, the healing foods, the dangers to avoid, the power of hydration, and the hidden influence of stress. Because the truth is, you don't need perfection to reclaim your health. You need a path, a clear picture of how all these pieces fit into one life-changing plan. And in our final part, that's exactly what I'll give you.